So I'm going to brew some Brewer's Best milk stout. These are the ingredients that I picked up, come in the kit. We've got dark malt extract liquid. We've got a light malt extract liquid. And then we've got our mixed grains here. Aroma, roasted barley, and dark chocolate malts. Muslin bag for putting the grains into so that we can steep the grains. We've got Cascade hops and German Magnum hops. This recipe also calls for some maltodextrin and lactose, which is what gives us a kind of a big head, they say, as well as the sweet finish on the beer. We have I use Santa Clean, Star San. You can use whatever sanitizer you like. I prefer this. It does foam a little bit, but it works really well. We got Dan Star ale yeast here. Comes with the kit again, and you want to sanitize this packet as well as everything else here. We have our thief here for taking our hydrometer reading. We have a hydrometer, an airlock for once we pitch the yeast and start fermentation. Then we got the paddle here we're going to use to stir this thing and keep it well mixed and also keep it from foaming up. And of course you always want to sanitize the inside of your lid to your bucket. When you're fermenting anything that's going to touch your beer, basically you need to have it sanitized and clean. We don't want to get bacteria or any infection in here. So I'm going to mix some of this sanitizer up, and I mix it right in our fermenting bucket, and then I will soak all the things I just showed you in there, as well as anything else, any spoons or anything I use in there as well. And then I put the lid on. I'll take this lid, snap it on top of here, and then I shake the whole thing around, and that way I get that sanitizer all over the inside of the lid as well as the entire bucket. I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure everything is sanitized. What we're going to do here, I've got a 5 gallon pot, stainless steel brew pot. You want to get yourself a nice thermometer. This one doesn't go quite to the bottom, which is perfect because you don't want that thing touching the bottom or getting too close, because it will give you a false reading, because you're sitting on a burner. And I use a lid on mine just to get everything going. Burner's on the stove, takes a while to get everything boiling, and then once we do, the lid goes away. So I'm going to get started here. Okay, I start out with 3 gallons of water. You can go probably 4 or 5 if you want. The total recipe is 5. They say to start out with at least 2 gallons. This pot's big enough. I go with as much as I can. As far as what my stove will handle, I could put a little more in there, but it'll take so much longer for me to get it up to temp. 3 gallons is about my standard. It works out well. So we're going to get this up to roughly 150 degrees. We're going to keep it between 150 and 160, and then I'm going to steep the grains, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. So right now I'm adding water to the fermenter, and that's just to mix up some sanitizer. I've already got 1 gallon in here, and this mixes up at 1 ounce per 3 gallons. So I'm going to add 1 ounce of this sanitizer to 3 gallons of water. So we're going to add 1 ounce of our sanitizer. I'm just going to pour it in. I've already put 1 gallon in the bucket. This stuff tends to foam, as I mentioned earlier. That's why some people don't like to use it. If you do it this way, it doesn't foam as bad. So I'll add the water in gallon increments. And you want to keep the water roughly room temp. It doesn't have to be hot water, and you don't want it to be cold water. And that should work great to sanitize everything. And the package says it's like 3 to 5 minutes you let it soak. I just leave it in there while my water's coming up the temp over there for steeping the grains. So you just go ahead and add your yeast packet, the whole thing, because you're going to cut it open. And then this is our airlock. We're going to use some of the solution in the airlock, so I go ahead and just get it nice and full and let it soak. Hydrometer and our thief, which we use to take a specific gravity measurement, and then our paddle for stirring. And I fill this up. 3 gallons is about halfway, and I'll flip those so I get both sides. So again, while this is sitting here sanitizing, in a minute we'll start steeping grains when that water's up to temp. And that way, the whole time this thing's cooking, we got some sanitizer going on here. The next step, we're going to take our muslin bag here. That water's up to temp. I'm at about 155. I'm going to take our grains here, cut the bag open, and this can be messy, which is why I do it over my garbage can. There's a bit of dust that comes off of it, but you want to get the muslin bag over it as much as you can. And again, this is dried grain, so there will be some dust. You don't want this to touch the garbage, but I do it just like that. Try and get everything out of this bag. And like I said, there'll be a little bit of dust. Depending on your recipe, different grains. This is quite a bit. Then you tie a loose knot in this bag. And then we're going to take the grains and put them in the water and let it steep. Nice and easy. And we're 155 to 160. And we're going to try and maintain that temperature. You don't want to get it too hot, you don't want it too cool. So anywhere from 150 to 165 is what the instructions say. You'll let that steep for 20 minutes. Personally, I like to go 30 to make sure we get the full base in there. And once we've steeped that and we pull this bag out, you have the work. Another thing I do while the grains are steeping, I take the LME, the liquid malt extracts, any that you have in your kit, and I put them in nice hot water. I don't know if you can see the steam there, but tap water is, I don't know, it's right around 120. It's pretty hot here, so I let that sit, and it essentially softens up the malt extract, makes it easier to pour when the time comes to add it to our wort. Okay, so it's been about 25-30 minutes since we put this in. If you want to get a look at this, we've steeped our grains. Now we have wort, nice and dark, maintained right around 160. It's starting to climb a little bit because I brought the heat up. Now you want to get this bag out and just let it kind of drain. You don't want to wring it or anything and get any debris in there. Not that there, you know, it's not going to kill it if you do, but it's best if you just let it drain like so. Put it in a bowl and let that cool before I toss it in the garbage. You can reuse the bag if you like. I usually don't, but you can. You have to clean it up, of course. Now I'm going to crank the heat up. We have to bring this to a boil. And in my situation here, it takes a little bit. So we'll be back when I got a boil. We are at boiling. Now I'm going to turn the heat off. I'm going to grab my pad here out of my sanitizer. Time to add the malt extract and the sugars. This can be a little tricky. You want to stir and definitely make sure you turn the heat off because it will scorch very quickly and it's not so good for your beer, let's just put it that way. These again were soaking in the warm water in the sink there. It was hot water for a while. You can start it while you're getting this to a boil after you've steeped your grains if you like. It really depends on how well your stove is, or if you're using an outdoor burner, which you can do in the summertime. It's winter right now, so that's why we're indoors. And anything that goes into this container here, this brew kettle, will be sanitized because you're boiling it. So you don't necessarily have to sanitize that spoon, but I always do. Your paddle, your spoon, whatever you use. And then I'll take some of the boiling wort here and use it to help get every little bit of this LME out of here. And this is the light extract, and you'll see in a minute I'm going to switch to the dark, and then we're going to add the sugar. And really what this extract is our wort already somewhat boiled down. Basically it's the same type of thing, they just evaporate the water out of it, and we're going to essentially rehydrate it. Boy, dark is some heavy stuff. This is the first dark beer that I've done. I typically do IPAs, and wheat beers are my favorite. But this The stouts are starting to grow on me, so I thought I'd give it a try here. Should be kind of sweet. Be extra cautious, of course. This is still boiling, and it's just a plastic container here, so bad things can happen. Again, you can use it to get as much of this as you can out of here. I should probably give this a second rinse. Yeah, there's a lot of this coming out of here. And keep stirring, and you're going to want to keep stirring when we get the heat back on here. Try to bring this back to a boil. We're going to want to stir, and just stir and stir and stir. Later on when we add hops, you want to do the same thing, because typically when you add hops, this stuff really wants to foam up for a little while. So it's super important that you stir. And now I'm going to add the maltodextrin. This is their recipe. And this stuff, when you cut any of these sugars, you go to add, you're supposed to stir it in. I kind of dump it on top and then work it in, because the longer you keep this bag over top, the steam makes the sugar stick to the bag, and that's not the best thing in the world either. Anything on the sides of the pot you kind of want to scrape off. Get all that stuff down into your wort. A lot of this, once you get going on the boil again, will boil back into it. And when you get your boil going, you want to use a gentle rolling boil. You don't need an aggressive, fast boil. It's just a nice, slow rolling boil. And lots of stirring. And you'll figure it out. Certain recipes I end up stirring the whole time. This is the lactose sugar. And other recipes, you stir for a little bit, and when you add the hops, you stir, and then after that it's only occasional. Stir it up. In the meantime, I'll turn the heat back on. Try and get this thing back up to boiling. Just that quick, we're down to 180. So again, stir, stir, stir. Gentle rolling boil, and we'll be back shortly when we get back to a boil. We are boiling again. It's time to add some hops. Recipe calls for ½ ounce of German Magnum hops. You just want to keep the boil going and stir them in slowly. And these are pelletized hops, so it takes a minute, but they will cause this thing to foam, like I said, and you may see this right away. So it's important that you stir and babysit the pot. A lot of the brewers say that the unattended pot of wort is the one that boils over, and the one that's attended never boils over, and there couldn't be anything truer in my experience. Wow. So we went from a really sweet aroma from all those sugars and that malt extract in here. Just adding those Magnum hops made a heck of a difference. Now you can smell the you can smell the bittering units, basically the aroma of the hops, and that changes everything in the beer. Now these are supposed to be, once you add them, we're setting a timer for 50 minutes per the brew schedule, and we let it boil. So keep stirring. A gentle rolling boil. You don't want a fast boil. This is pretty good right now. I might even have to turn it down a little bit. Just a gentle rolling boil, just barely going. Keep an eye on it, keep stirring it, and I'll see you in 50 minutes. It's been 50 minutes, still got a nice gentle rolling boil. Time to add ½ ounce Cascade hops. Same thing as last time. Stir them in, kind of slow and gentle. And once we get them stirred in for a second, set your timer for 10 minutes. And in 10 minutes is when we conclude the boil. Alright, one more quick tip. We got about 5 minutes left on our boil. This is a wort chiller. I made this myself. You can buy them commercially, maybe a little better than this one, but it works great for me. It was just some copper tubing I had, and I use a little aquarium pump to recirculate some ice water, and I'll show you that in a little bit. The reason I'm talking about this right now, while we got about 5 minutes left, to sterilize this, the easiest way, and be careful doing this, is we're going to pull this pot out a little bit, and I'm going to try and immerse it right in the heat here. And I don't have a lot of room, and while it's finishing its boil here, it will sterilize the wort chiller that we're going to use shortly. So that's just something I just wanted to touch on. Be cautious with your hoses. I'm lucky with the cabinet style we have. Keeps them up away from the flames. Just keep an eye on them. I know it sounds common sense, but it's real easy to make a mistake and burn some stuff up. Now, you can use the sanitizer. My bucket's not big enough. I made this to specifically fit my brew keg here, my brew kettle, I'm sorry, my kettle. And it doesn't fit inside the 5-gallon all that great, the fermenter. If you got a wider bucket, or if you're smart and you learn from my mistakes, you'll make it so it fits inside a bucket. You can put it right inside the sanitizer. Alright, boil's done. I've let this sit for another 5 minutes or so to cool off some. I'm reading about 210 right now. I'm going to take this over to the sink here, and I filled one side up with cold water, which I will add more once I kind of figure out what my level is. Then this side, I put my pump in here. This is for the wort chiller that I made. They're commercial ones you buy typically will hook to your faucet, and you turn the faucet on and run cool water. I don't like to waste the water as much. I take some ice. Bag ice works really good. This is what I have, so this is how I do it. I fill it up. Make sure your thermometer's in here. You don't want it touching. I hung mine on the wort chiller, and it's at an angle so it's touching the actual wort instead of you know, anything metal, because I don't want a false reading again. And then you just turn your pump on. Make sure it primes up good. Blowing all the air out here. Takes a minute to fill up usually. Back on down. And then I know I got good water flow. So now I'll let this water recirculate. Occasionally I'll drain this water. It's already good and hot. That was cold out of the tap, 55-degree water, and it's already warm that quick. But we're going to draw the heat out of this. You want to cool your wort as quickly as possible, and that's you don't want to get bacteria growing, but you need the wort to be cool enough, and I'm going to use a fan here also. Helps dissipate the steam as well as assist in cooling. You want the wort cool enough so that you can pitch your yeast without killing the yeast. So you need to be below 80 degrees, typically right around 75, 77 is where I end up. And then at that point it'll be in the fermenter. I pitch my yeast, and we're done for a week or so. As you can see, real quick here, this is steaming up nice and cold going in, and coming out this line's almost room temp, and that's because we're extracting the heat. We're already down to 190. So this process usually takes, I don't know, when I've cooled it in the past, changing the water or putting it out in the snow, here it's February right now, it's taken several hours, and with this wort chiller usually I can do it within about 35 to 40 minutes, down to about 80 degrees. Okay, I'm going to take this out, hand drip dry from it. We've cooled it down. Instructions on this one say about 70 degrees. I got it down to about 73, and by the time I top off the level with some water to bring it up to 5 gallons, I'm sure we'll be plenty cool. Now the fun part. Transferring it to the fermenter. And they say you don't want to get too much of the trub, whatever they call it, that's in the bottom here, which is your hops and whatnot. I'm not super concerned. When I rack it later, we'll get all that out. So there you go. You can see there's a little bit of scorching in there, nothing bad. We did a pretty good job there. Now, if we look at the levels on the side of the bucket, we are sitting just above the 4-gallon mark. Now this needs to be at 5 gallons. What I did here, I saved some of the sanitizer in the pitcher. I'm going to move it to a measuring cup here and keep the yeast and mainly the airlock in here, and this is so I have some to fill the airlock with. I'm going to add this and try and bring it up towards the 5-gallon mark there. I don't know if you can see it on the camera or not, but I'm pretty close right there. I can't tell from where I'm standing. Just a hair under. Okay, that puts us at 5 gallons. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to measure our original gravity. This is called the Thief. I think you can figure out why if you watch. It's got a little plunger in the bottom. It fills up to the level of the whatever liquid you immerse it in. Then we're going to lift it up and it's supposed to seal. And then we drop the hydrometer in so I can get a reading. Okay. Starting gravity. Make sure I didn't get anything bad in there. Still almost a little heavy. I might have to add a little bit more water. We're at 1.066. Take your yeast packet. This is a dry yeast. You don't rehydrate it.
Oh, that was close.
Open it up and you sprinkle it over the whole top. Kind of even. Let it spread. Put the whole packet in. These are live yeast. They'll do their thing over a period of usually 5 to 7 days. Okay. We've got our spoon that was in the sanitizer here, and we're going to stir it up. Now, after this, you pretty much don't want to agitate this or stir it or anything like that, because it'll add oxygen. You'll aerate it. When you aerate beer, it's not good. As you know, it goes flat. So at this point, we just turned our wort into beer because we've added yeast. And the yeast will eat the sugars, basically, that's in here. I'm going to get this really spinning. They will eat the sugars, and they produce carbon dioxide, which is how you get them carbonated. But they convert the sugars to alcohol. This is how we make our alcohol. So that OG original gravity reading we just took with the hydrometer should drop significantly, and what that means is that means the yeast have consumed the sugar in the solution, so they've converted it to alcohol, and that's how we'll know our beer's done. Once that gravity reading is consistent for 3 days, we know the yeast are done. They've eaten what they're going to eat, and it'll be time to bottle. The airlock here, our sanitized bucket lid. I don't recommend you snap the lid on immediately, because there's pressure in there. When you push it down, it can blow the water out of here. Your fermenter, your airlock that goes on top of your fermenter, there's usually lines on it, and you want to fill it between the lines. And that allows gas to escape, but it doesn't allow anything else inside. And there's a line right here, so I'm pretty good. Let a little of this get on that grommet. Push this into the grommet. And then snap your lid down. Make sure when you do this your handle's able to go up. Found out the hard way one time with that. But make sure you get a good seal. All the way around. I'm going to wipe up that excess. Usually this will start bubbling within 24 hours. You'll start seeing this thing bubbling steady, and then we know the yeast are working. So now it's time to put this in a cool, dark place, and you maintain the temperature between 64 and 72 degrees is ideal. So if you're doing this in the summer, you're going to want to try and do it in the basement or somewhere cool. And if you're doing it in the winter, like we are here, I keep the house cool during the day. The room this will be in stays in the 60s. So what I'm going to do, this is called a brew belt. And this is just a heat strip that attaches to my bucket, and it'll maintain the temperature. And then I'm going to wrap it with something dark, probably a towel. Once I get this fast and plug it in, it'll keep it right around 72 degrees. So we'll see when it's fermented. I'm going to show you, this is about 48 hours from when we pitched this, the yeast the other night and got this thing going. When I checked on it yesterday afternoon, this belt's nice and warm, keeping it about 70 degrees. I had it in a bedroom on the main floor of the house. And it was quite warm. When your yeast start eating, it gets really warm, and you get what's called the krausening, I believe is how they pronounce it. All that crusty looking stuff there, that was all foamed up like crazy, and it was just blowing all out. You can see it's leaked on the bucket, and I've cleaned this thing up a lot. It was everywhere. What happened is, because there's so much sugar in this particular milk stout here, it's the first one I've done that's this heavy, and it really went crazy, and that's normal. It's not uncommon. And having my airlock on top, you saw me put the airlock here in the grommet. The airlock has a very small opening, and it plugged it up with all that yeast and gunk, essentially. And so that causes this bucket to swell, and I'm lucky it didn't blow up all over on me. I caught it just in time. It was hissing and going crazy. I obviously didn't get a chance to film that because I was kind of busy. So what I've done here, this is called a blow-off tube, and I just took a piece of, this is food grade tubing that I use for tapping maple trees. And also the same kind of stuff you'd use with your racking cane or your bottling wand or any of that stuff. You can buy it at the brew store. You can get it even at the hardware in some places, but it's a food grade, I believe it's a vinyl tubing. Anyway, I took a half-gallon jug here and I mixed up some sanitizer, somewhat heavy just because it's now in my laundry room, so I want to make sure everything's safe. And I had this clamp to keep the hose from blowing out of solution. Make sure you don't pinch it here. And I put it about 2/3 of the way down towards the bottom. I don't know if you can see that in there. Yeah. So it's almost at the bottom. At any rate, while it was still gassing off pretty good, until the temperature dropped a bit down here, the blow-off tube worked great. And that'll handle any of your foam and debris that comes through. Obviously, the hose diameter is much larger. On the airlocks, there's a little cross in between. I'm not sure why that's there, but that narrows the opening tremendously. So it's 4 smaller openings, so it doesn't take much to plug up. So that being done, this thing's calmed down a lot. Like I said, a lot of that has to do with temperature. It was still under pressure when I took the lid off. And as nasty as that kind of looks, it's going to be wonderful beer. It smells great. So we'll leave this in here a few more days. I'll take some hydrometer readings to make sure that it's stopped fermenting, and it should be within the finished gravity specs of the recipe that came with the beer kit. Once I know it's not fermenting anymore, we'll be ready to bottle. And as I said in the previous clip, we're going to rack this into a secondary, and I'll show you that as well. And that's just to clarify the beer, and it's not a required step. It's recommended by Brewers Best, the people that make the kit. Anyone I've talked to at the brew store says the same thing. You're just better off going into a glass carboy and giving it another 4 or 5 days, make sure everything settles out. And I found that it works very well doing that. You get a lot of this trub and trube, whatever they call it, out of there, and it works great. So we'll be back in 4 or 5 days when it's time to do that. It's been 5 days since we brewed everything up. I showed you we had to put a blow-off tube in here because it was going crazy. As you can see, there's still a little pressure in here, which is good. It's time now to put this beer into our secondary fermentation carboy here. I got a 6-gallon carboy, and I've sanitized it. You might see a little foam still in here, and that's okay. It doesn't affect anything. I use the SaniClean sanitizer, and it tends to foam a little bit. One thing you should note, I cleaned this first, and all my equipment I use a granulated cleaner just for home brewing. Some of these are no rinse. This one you have to rinse. I found out the hard way. So definitely read your labels. But this cleaner you use first gets any deposits, any grime out of there. I use it when I'm done brewing. Like when I get done, this fermenter is going to get clean with this stuff. then you sanitize everything. I can't stress it enough. I'll keep saying it. I know it gets old, but sanitize everything. I'm gonna try and get this hose out of here. Keep plenty of towels on hand, because as you can see, there's some moisture going around. And I'm gonna save this sanitizer for later on. You can always use this for other things. What I did to sanitize the carboy here, I mixed up, poured the sanitizer in here, filled it up with water, and kind of shake it all around in there. And you need 3 minutes of contact time with this particular sanitizer. So I kind of hold it on its side and gradually turn it. Then I take that and I dump it into my bottling bucket or whatever other bucket you got. This is called a racking cane. This racking cane, I'll show you in a minute, we use to rack the beer from one vessel to another. So I'm going to open this up here and then I'll try and give you a look. These bucket lid pullers come in very handy. Okay, ooh, smells good. Now here's trub all over everything. That was from the foaming up I was showing you the other day. That's yeast and byproducts of them doing their thing. And so you can see inside here, not the most appealing. I can tell you it smells good, and it is still fermenting a bit. And then you don't want it to be done fermenting when you go to put it in your secondary. You still want a little activity. Now real quick here, I'm going to take my hydrometer and kind of give a reading here and see what our density is, how much it's changed. And I don't know how well you can see that, but I'm going to, let's see where we're at. It was, let me get to the right scale. Beer is 1.030 roughly. I think we got a little ways to go yet, which is perfect. And we'll get this started here. Again, there's sanitizer in this bucket. Sanitizer does not affect the beer. You don't want to mix it if you can help it, but having it wet with sanitizer is not going to hurt anything at all. And this little bit that's in here, I'll dump that back in. Now the racking cane, you put your hose into your carboy, and at this point we don't want to aerate this much. Like the last time we did, because we wanted to mix the yeast and the sugars and everything together in a solution. Now we don't want to do it because air and beer don't mix. I'm going to put this under here so it's kind of tilted, and then we'll get this thing started. And just gentle. You don't really want to force this thing. Sometimes it takes a little bit to get it going. But once it's started, you just let it naturally do its thing. And what this is going to do is clarify the beer a bit, which with a dark beer, I'm not sure how well that works, but we're going to find out. The trub and any leftover yeast and stuff that's in here will settle out, and a lot of that will still be left in our fermenter here. Of course on the sides here, but in the bottom, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I'm going to rack this into here. The other tools you need for today, when you do this, you're going to need an airlock. I prefer this style with the 2 cylinders versus the 3-piece style I used before, and you'll need a bung to plug it up. And that's it. So we're just going to rack this over, and I'll show you what it looks like in a minute. All done racking. Beer's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. And then here's what you're left with to clean up. That's your trub in the bottom there. It's some pretty nasty looking stuff. When you're drawing this down, you want to pull your racking cane up out of that gunk right before you'll see the color starting to change in the tube here. And that's when you know you're going to lose a little bit of liquid in there, but it's better to lose that liquid than to, you know, have all that gunk in this batch. You want it nice and pure. So I've got airlock here fitted into a bung. I'm going to wet this a little bit in the sanitizer, make it easier to go in, and then we're just going to fit it in there, make sure that's pushed in tight. And then I'm going to store this for another 1 to 2 weeks in a warm, dark place, 64 to 72 degrees. It's about 65, 66 where I'll store it. There's a dark, nice closet I can keep it in. Keep an eye on it. It should not go crazy where you need a blow-off tube at this point. As I told you, the gravity on it now, specific gravity, was 1.032, and I need to be down around 1.021 to 1.024 for this beer to be complete. Getting ready to put this in to the closet I was telling you about, and I just want to give you an idea. This is what an airlock looks like when it's working. See, we're still actively fermenting, even though it was nothing like the other day, and the solution is nice and warm. I've had that brew belt on it to keep it around 70, but now we'll keep it around 65. Watch the level, because I can see the max lines on there, and I had the level is even with sanitizer in there. That's what I like to use. You can use just plain water, but sanitized water to me helps. It's like insurance. Anyway, once I put it on the carboy, you can see it forces the water all to one side, and that's literally that pressure, that gas, CO2. Whoops, and there she goes. So that's how an airlock works. So it's bottling day. The beer is, I measured the gravity, it's 1.023. Should be between 1.021 and 1.024, so we're right there. It has not fermented in a couple of days. The readings were stable, so I know fermentation stopped. I've sanitized my bottling wand, my racking cane and hose. This bucket had the sanitizer in it. This is my bottling bucket. I sanitized that, and I was just getting started. Fill it up here. So we're going to transfer the beer from the secondary to the bottling bucket, and then we're going to bottle. Now earlier, I didn't video this, but I hand washed all the bottles. And hand washed, I use a bottle brush, and you get inside and scrub them in that cleaner that I used earlier. Usually a no rinse cleaner, but that's not what I have right now. And then to sanitize this time, instead of using the Star San and the sulfator, I turned off the rinse aid on the dishwasher here and just put it on a sanitize and wash cycle with no soap in it, because you don't want any soap or drying agents, jet dry or any of that stuff, because it'll contaminate your beer. So those are clean, sanitized, and ready to use. As always, make sure you get sanitizer and everything. I got a little bit in our measuring cup here, and that's the bottle caps we're going to use, so they're all sanitized. Over here, 3.5 ounces of corn sugar for priming, dissolved in 2 cups of boiling water. You boil it for a couple of minutes. I like to raise my bucket up, so I'll set it up on this chair. I'll have bottles set up here, and then we'll start bottling. And as customary when you do your beer, you got to drink some of your home brew. So we'll be back with the bottling. Just like before, when you start the racking cane, gentle and slow. We don't want to aerate this beer. It is beer now, it's finished. See, and it didn't take, so you don't want to do it quickly. Just nice and steady. And once we get it going, usually it'll maintain itself. So once it's going like that, you can see that it's pouring out pretty steady. That's our beer. And now I'm going to get this priming sugar mixture in here. Typically let it cool a little more, but I'm getting ahead of myself trying to video. So I'm going to add this. The sugar in this water will reactivate any of the yeast that are in there if I didn't just cook them all. And those yeast will start to consume the sugar, and that'll carbonate your beer. If we get them bottled, we're going to set them 2 to 4 weeks probably. More likely 4 weeks. It's a heavier beer. With your recipe kit, priming sugar, they send you 5 ounces. Always read your directions thoroughly, because this particular case, it says to only use 3.5 ounces. Well, there's 5 ounces in that package, so it tells you how to measure it out by the tablespoon. That's what I did. If you put too much sugar in here, you're going to get bottle bombs. It's going to overcarbonate, and you're going to blow up bottles when you're fermenting them. And I've never had that happen, but there's a first time for everything, and I am concerned about it with this beer. So in a minute we'll start bottling. I'm just going to rack this into here. We'll get over there with a bottling wand set up and start filling them up. Okay, get it started. We're using a rack and cane. Bottling bucket also has a spigot you can use. I found that this way is faster. And the way I do this, I'll do several at a time, and you won't be able to see it probably on the camera, but this bottling one has a little stopper at the bottom. You lift up and it stops, you press down and it starts filling. You fill the bottles till they're just about to the top. So it'll be like right at the lip where the cap would go, and then you lift up, and by the time you pull the wand out, that little bit of displacement allows you head space for expansion. That's how you know your bottles are filled properly. Right to the top, I lift it out, the beer level is right about there. And I'll fill 4 or 5 of these at a time, and then I'll cap. Put that back in the bucket. Grab yourself a cap right out of your sanitizer. It's magnetic in the middle. Some people put the cap in here first. Doesn't work as well for me. I put it on there. Steady, even on both sides. Push down, you'll feel it crimp. Now it's crimped, bottled. You don't want to shake them up too much. And what I like to do, if you have same color labels and you're going to do multiple batches, I'll take a Sharpie and label them. So this one is a milk stout, so I'm going to put an MS or an S, just something so down the road if I have leftovers, mixed up batches, I can distinguish what's what. Again, cap on top, capper, push down, you'll feel it go. And you will screw up some caps. I'm really good at that if you don't have it all the way set down. Just expect it. And you just keep doing that until you're done. I'm not going to bore you with the details. I'll do one more. Again, sanitizer doesn't matter, it doesn't affect the brew. Place it on top, down, and when you get a rhythm going you can do it a lot quicker, or in my case sometimes with 2 people. I wipe the bottles off, label them, and then when you're done you put them in a dark place just like before, like when you fermented. Cool dark between 64 and 72 for 2 to 4 weeks, and I'm going to go probably 4 weeks just to make sure they're carbonated. Check them every few days to make sure you're not getting bottle bombs, and a bottle bomb is, like I was saying earlier, you'll overcarbonate and it'll just blow this off, or the bottle itself will explode from too much pressure. I haven't experienced it yet, I've only read about it. Hopefully I don't find out the hard way. So we'll be back next time here with finishing this up. We'll crack one open and pour it, see how it looks. So the time we've been waiting for, time to drink a beer. It's been, I don't know, 5-6 weeks. I've waited a little while on this one. Had a little trouble with carbonation because I kept my temperature low. And that was 62, 64. I would recommend you go somewhere closer to 70 degrees. 70 degrees keeps those yeast happy, and they eat more and they carbonate. So, without wasting any more time, let's pour this and see what it looks like. Brewer's Best Milk Stout. So far, great body. And this particular one does not have a lot of head. It's getting there, but it's not quite what I hoped yet. Now I had a couple the other day, and they pretty much frothed right over. And that's not uncommon when you do home brewing. If you don't get the same amount of priming sugar, the mix is a little off. One bottle is warmer than another. There's a lot of variables. At any point, yeah, it looks good. It's dark. It's got a little cream on top, and we'll give it a taste. Pinky out's important. Not bad, not bad at all. You can taste the chocolate notes. There's a bit of a coffee note to it. Mouth feels good. It's not overly heavy. I'd say we did pretty good. So that's Brewer's Best Milk Stout. That's my version anyway. Thanks for watching.